Thank you very much, Mr. Goodwin, and thank all of you for having me this evening. My name is Mark Smith. I'm president of Big Alum Lake Association. I'm very grateful for your time. Time is our most precious resource, and the older I get, the more precious it is, and I recognize that. I also, as I mentioned last time, sit on a number of charitable and civic boards. I spend a lot of time in meetings like this, so I appreciate and respect the fact that you're taking an evening to do this every month at least, and tonight you're spending an extra hour with me. I'm very grateful for that. I don't take that for granted. I will say I do a ton of public speaking. For the most part, I'm very comfortable. Some would say even articulate at times. I'm a little bit anxious tonight because I've got a lot of material I'd like to touch on. I'm excited about, actually. And there is some tensions between, I alluded to it again last week, between the town and conservation. I have some observations, not right now, but that I'd like to share that may be a little bit awkward. And mostly I've just got a ton of information that I want to try to get through and have it make sense to you guys. So I spent all afternoon putting my notes together, and I kept cutting down and cutting down and cutting down, and hopefully I'll be able to get through it in a way that makes sense to you, and most importantly benefits Big Alum and all the lakes. And we've got people here from SLAC. So as I said last month, from my perspective, it'll ultimately be up to BALA, of course, but from my perspective, we're happy to share any of our findings. If indeed we hire a limnologist, a lake doctor, which it looks like we're going to hire at least one, we have permission to do that from the members voted to approve that. And we'll share that with other lakes. We'll share it with SLAC. I mean, whatever information we get. Each lake is its own different ecosystem, so not all the information will apply to South Pond or Lead Mine or whatever, but there's a lot of overlap, and we want to do what we can to protect bodies of water in the area, especially ours, of course. So most of what I will say today is personal, again, as I said last week, and not in the role of BALA president. There's only really a few things I can tell you as BALA president. One, members voted to hire a limnologist to study the lake and take a scientific approach to working with the ecosystem. And two, members voted to create a subcommittee to come up with recommendations. Those recommendations go from the subcommittee to the environmental committee and then come to the board of directors of BALA ultimately for approval, and especially if there's funding issues, that's the board of directors' purview. If I talk about anything else, I'm really talking as Mark L. Smith, a resident of Big Alum, and also a former private lake owner, which does give me some experience and hopefully some value about what I can discuss with you. Again, it was a different lake, it was in the desert, it was a different ecosystem, but there are applications that I think are relevant to our lake and the struggles that we're going through, which are significant and growing yearly. I'm not an alarmist, but we've got some real problems with weeds and algae, and we have had, as long as people can remember, a pristine, clear, and very few weeds. Of course, scattered here, a couple here and there, but nothing that people say, oh my gosh, I don't want to get in my swim area, I'm getting tangled up in weeds, which we're hearing now, of course. Two small details I want to just bring up. I want to bring to Lauren's attention. I want it on the record. You may tell me I need to go to someone else in town, the select board or otherwise. You're probably aware that the wetland on the east side of Lake Road is a swampy area, and it's not all swamp. I think it's about 31 acres or something, is for sale. The house that was attached to that property has sold. Independently, the property itself is still for sale. There's a debate about how many buildable lots are on that. Is it 3, is it 5, is it 7? There are several buildable lots, but it's not like all 31 acres is buildable by any stretch. A lot of it is protected wetlands. And we would love to see, speaking for my friends on Lake Road and people in BALA, we would love to see that stay some type of a conservation area, some type of public land. A lot of the things I'm going to bring up tonight are, can we continue talking about this? I'm not looking for an answer like, yes, we'll do this, or I'm just bringing it to your attention. But anything that conservation can do to help us with the town, that if the town can purchase it, or if we can get access to the state or or for that matter, any private charity that's got money to purchase it. I can't recall exactly what the price is now that's been separated away. It's several $100,000.
270.
Oh, is that what it is now?
That's what I think it is.
Okay, that's
That's
less.
the number I heard.
That would be wonderful if that's less than I thought. So,
Well, they sold the house
yep.
with 2 acres maybe? Like that.
Yeah, right on the water, and that was the bulk of the value for sure. I thought it was more like $500,000, but shoot, that's just, I have no idea.
Well, I
Don't
think
quote
I
me on that.
heard, you know. All right.
But anyway, we would like to protect that. And the water that's in that goes down into the ground, some of it, and becomes part of the aquifer, which, yes, we use with our wells, those of us who live on the lake, because we don't have city water, which I agree, I would prefer we had city water. Obviously, I'm very happy that we've got sewer. But if it does indeed go into any water that goes into the aquifer, some of that is coming back up in Big Alum. Because it's spring-fed. Big Alum is partially spring-fed. So I just want to bring that to your attention. I don't know if there's a betterment opportunity possible to say, hey, we've got a limited amount of time. We don't know how long this land, I mean, it could have already sold, of course. But, is there any way we can get any of the resources of the town?
So the process for acquiring the land is that conversation has to begin from the town administrator. So I would be glad to go have that conversation with you in front of her, but she has to be the one to approach the property owner. We would have the property assessed, and then if we're moving forward, make an offer from there. There is a possibility that CPC funds could be used to acquire that land, but that goes to town meeting. Robin would be the one to know if there was any other financial sources to help purchase the land other than community preservation.
Fantastic. That's great.
And then if it came to like moving forward for the next step, if the Conservation Commission wants to support that, they can write a letter of support as well.
Wonderful.
You get together and buy it, or because it mainly benefits you, right?
Well,
Why do you want town funds for that?
Does it benefit us? It benefit. I described how it might benefit us is that the water, some of the water, I believe the river, there's a stream that comes out of it that ultimately flows into the Connecticut River. So it's not like the water's flowing directly into Big Alum, and it's not like we need it. Like even during these drought conditions, I was telling Mr. Goodwin just before the meeting, right now we've had a 3-month drought, which looks like it might end next week. We're at full capacity, and that was before yesterday's rain. I spoke to, there's a gentleman who's in charge of the dam, lowering and raising the dam at the proper times per the OOC. His name is Ken. And I was 2 or 3 days ago, I said, Ken, how are we doing on the water level? Looks pretty normal to me. And he says, we're at full water. So, and we have had some pretty big storms here or there. You get a couple inches here and a couple inches there, it really helps. So it's not like we need that swampland in order to have Big Alum. But it's more really up to the town. Is it important to protect it as protected wetland? I mean, they aren't going to build in the swamp. They're not going to build in the swamp. And I wouldn't miss the mosquitoes if they did, by the way. But I've seen a bear in there. I've seen a fox in there. There's beavers in the stream, and obviously millions of other critters. And I'd love to see them stick around. So, yeah, but it's not like Big Alum is going to be do or die. I mean, if they build 6 houses over there and they sell it and be like, okay, yeah, so I'm happy to meet with you and Robin, needless to say. And then I also want to let you know, and maybe you can tell the select board, or I don't, whatever, but we had an incident on the island. So there's a small island, it's less than, I don't know, maybe half an acre or something, that of course is state land because the lake is state land. And several weeks ago, somebody cut down a tree. And we're like, what the heck? And nobody knew anything about it. And then a few days later, it was gone. So somebody had come in a boat of some kind, and they must have chopped it up because I didn't even know how big the tree was. I think it was sizable. And it disappeared, it vanished. And it must have happened at night because we've got people who've got cameras on the island in the front yard, and it looks at the island, and we couldn't see anything. And they must have used an electric chainsaw, which 20 years ago they didn't exist, so it would have been too loud. We would have known about it. We have no idea what happened. We put out an email blast to all lake residents and said, anybody got a clue? We haven't heard anything. It's bizarre. Hopefully it's a one-off deal. It does raise an interesting question or conundrum that we're in with at Bala, which is we're responsible for keeping the island clean, and we do. We have people who, anyway, and we have a check-in system. If people want to camp, they make a reservation through our website, et cetera. But the state owns it. The Commonwealth owns it. So we've no power over it. And so, for instance, what do we do? Probably nothing to avoid another such incident. You know, the thing that came to my mind is cameras, but A, again, it's not our land to put something like that on it. And B, people take their families, and if they do it properly, which there's not a lot of mess there, human mess, which is great. But if they bring a little porta potty of sorts and they carry their waste out, someone's using the bathroom there, we don't want to be taking pictures of them. So I don't really know what the solution is. I'm basically just bringing it to your attention, and the select board is the harbor master for the lake, I guess. So we're just letting them know this happened. I don't think there's
Did they
anything.
have a fire with the wood on the island?
No, there is a campfire.
There wasn't a campfire?
No, it wasn't burned. It wasn't burned. That's a good question. And there was no evidence of a recent fire. And my sense was it was too big of a tree to, knock it out in one night or something. Yeah, there wasn't any particular activity that anybody noticed that would have led to it. I want to give a little history. I mentioned it very briefly about my past lake ownership, and I think it's relevant. I'm not just telling you stories about my life. Over 20 years ago, my wife and I were passionate water skiers. We purchased a small private lake in the high desert of Central Oregon. It was on 300 acres of land. It's out in the boonies. It was not worth many, many millions of dollars. It was out in the boonies. But it was still a really nice 300 acres of beautiful sagebrush mostly and rabbit brush. And it had a 40-acre lake, and it was ideal for water skiing. It was long and narrow, and of course, I fell in love with it, and I convinced my wife, and we moved out there, and we raised our kids for 20 years. Shortly after we got there, later in the season, we were water skiing on algae that was so thick it was like you're on a green carpet. And I was thinking, what have I gotten myself into here? And so it forced me to learn a lot about lake management and ecosystems. The first thing I did was hire a limnologist from Portland State University. And he came out, did a lot of water analysis. Anyway, obviously he did a whole report for me. And what he told me was this. It's the desert. There's not enough rain. I had to pump from one of two wells. And the well that had been pumping the lake for many years, it would existed decades before we purchased it, was very close to an alfalfa field that had been in existence for decades. What does a farmer put on alfalfa? Fertilizer. Where does it go? Into the 400-foot well. Not 800 foot, but 400 feet. That water was coming out with tons of fertilizer, and I was pumping nutrients into my lake, and it was a disaster. And the first thing I did is I used chelated copper to kill the algae, and it worked. It was great. And I'm thinking, I got this clear lake, wonderful. 3 weeks later, all the weeds that had been at the bottom and couldn't get sun because of the algae came to the surface. Now I had a lake full of weeds. Anyway, so very similar to what we're dealing with in Big Alum. Our water quality is very good. It's very clear. The bad news is the sunlight gets to the weeds, and the weeds grow like weeds. So he tested, and the other well that was far away was not near the rancher, the alfalfa grower, and had much less phosphates, nitrates, etc. Plant nutrients. It didn't have nearly the amount of plant nutrients. So I switched wells anyway. And the other thing he suggested was a retention pond. This is important. I'm going somewhere with this, believe it or not. A retention pond full of weeds and reeds and pretty much anything that could grow. And I dammed it off, the little dam, and and it worked very well. So the water coming in was going through a filtration system of natural weeds and reeds, then comes into the body of the lake, and it had fewer nutrients because I was pumping it out of not near a fertilized field. I was able to decrease the amount of herbicides and algicides that I put in that over time steadily until I virtually had no chemicals to put into the lake, which of course was my goal. I wanted, fewer chemicals for toxicity reasons and just to keep things as natural as possible. We can't do that at Big Alum. We can't say to someone, oh, well, all of you on the west side of the lake, we'll just let your weeds grow. We won't treat those, and they'll grow and they'll eat up all the nutrients, and the rest of the lake will benefit. So obviously we can't do that. Let's see. I want to thank you for sharing the article about Daiquat. Lauren sent that to me. I've shared it with the Environmental Committee, and we will be sharing that with the Board of Directors. We haven't put any Daiquat in since we got that article, by the way. Will be interesting to see how people receive it. Some people, it may scare the heck out of them. Some people may say, oh, that's just hearsay or not trusted as scientific. I don't know, but we appreciate it. But again, I'm speaking as Mark Smith, not Bala President. I'm not approved to tell you these things on behalf of the Lake Association. To me, the fewer chemicals that we put in, the better. That's our goal. That's where we'd like to go. The other thing I want to say is that we are taking a very science-based approach to everything that we're doing. So at the moment, Bala's official position is we don't know if fertilizers used around the lake are causing weeds and algae because we haven't proven it. And we keep telling ourselves that on the Environmental Committee and everything. And we have been given the orders to find out what's going on with the lake. My personal opinion is that's the number one reason. But we're not making that assumption, and I want everyone to understand that. But we will follow the science, and hopefully, if we do things in the right way, as I mentioned last month, we will open hearts and minds to people to understand what's going on with the lake, and we'll change some minds, and people will be open to changing their behavior. I am aware at this point that conservation code limits, or the code doesn't allow fertilizer within 200 feet of any body of water. And so, but people are skeptical. People are skeptical of that. And so, yeah. Anyway, any questions so far? I've been rambling on. I want to make sure I'm engaging. Well, this is where it gets a little bit.
They believe it or they don't, right? They're not skeptical.
They don't want to. They don't want. In my opinion, again, this is just one man's opinion. In my opinion, they don't want to believe it.
Yeah.
And so we're going to do the very best we can to bring the science forward so that it's irrefutable, that this is the reason why. And honestly, one of our board members suggested at our last meeting that we hire two limnologists, one to confirm, one to do the majority of the work, and the second one to confirm his or her findings, so that it really is all the more indisputable. Because, you can have two expert witnesses in a civil case in a court, and, one expert witness is paid to say one thing, one expert witness paid to say something else, and so, yeah, so we'll see. A lot of it is budgeting questions. We're really in early stages here about how much money we're going to commit to doing the research, because then we've got to do treatment. And maybe it's chemical treatment, non-Daiquat. Maybe it's something else. I'll get to some of the other ideas that we're thinking about. So we're very much in the brainstorming phase, which again is a little bit why I'm like just overloaded with details, because I got multiple people from multiple committees saying, make sure you tell them this and make sure you tell them that, and you don't want to hear everything I have to say. Sometimes it confuses me, and you'll just be numb if I gave you all those details.
Mark, have you reached out to Worcester State or any of the other local colleges too?
I'll ask Tim.
I think that's a good resource to explore too, because there are some really great local environmental programs, and especially college kids that are looking for studies for, thesis and research projects and whatnot. You might be able to get some free labor, or at least reduced cost labor.
Yeah, and there are different companies that have different levels of service and obviously different costs, and we're running into all a lot of that already. But one that looks very attractive to us, it's not the lowest cost, and we have yet to completely vet them. We just got some referrals to some of their clients, but I want to say the Mass DEP is one of their clients, and they've worked on 40 lakes, 40 lakes for Mass DEP. So we're looking for someone, at least one of we're looking for the best credentials possible and the best research possible. Not only is there the goal of stewarding a precious body of water that many of us have been on for decades. In my case, it's 40 years. In my wife's case, it's her whole life. We're doing that. But there's a question of money, honestly. And if I can't get to someone's heart about the beauty of the lake, I'll say to them, look, if all the value of the properties on Big Alum, I'm just throwing out a number, are 150 million bucks, if we lose a third of that value because our water quality goes down dramatically, we just lost $50 million collectively in homeowners' value. So there's a lot at stake in a lot of different ways. And so, it's not up to me to make the decisions. The board makes the decisions, and really with the big decisions come from the members. But I would hate to take a cheap approach, and I'm not saying that's, I'm just saying we really want to be careful to get the absolute best that we can. And we may have found someone. There's one particular firm that Tim Harrington has been doing a ton of work, and a lot of great work. Yeah, in fact, let me tell you a couple details about what Tim has done. They're tearing it up, vetting limnologists. I know he has spoken with at least a half dozen firms. We're doing a lot of our own research. We may be close to determining one or both of the lake doctors, the limnologists. Tim found the Lycott report. You may or may not be familiar with the Lycott report. There's a gentleman, his last name was Lycott. He lived on our lake for many years, and in the 1980s, I believe, he did it was his work. He was a professional. He did a comprehensive environmental report on Big Alum. It's like 1.5 inches thick. And Tim really wanted to find it to see where was the lake in that back then. So we have a before, and now we know what we've got going on now. I went swimming in Big Alum in the 1980s. Crystal clear water and very few weeds. And so Tim looked and high and low and finally found it in the library across the street, of all places. Somebody said, why don't you check the Joshua Library? And he did. And then he took a picture of every single page, hundreds of them, and he's made it into a digital document. So it'll be interesting. We'll have a similar report. Our plan is, it's called a watershed-based plan. Our thinking, again, it has to be approved, of course, by the board, is that we would do a similar report and then be able to compare the two. That would be interesting and helpful.
He took several years to do that report.
Did he? Yeah.
Could you send it to us? We have one. I couldn't find it in the basement.
If you can't find it, yes, we have a digital copy. I don't personally have it. I don't have my computer with me anyway, but Tim's got it. I wanted to let you know that Tim found, as far as we can tell, I won't stake my life on this, but it very much appears that according to the Mass DEP, Big Alum has been classified as a Category 5 impaired lake. And this is a scale from 1 to 5. Now, that struck Tim and me and some others as odd because, our lake is not a terrible swamp. I mean, on a scale of 1 to 5.
Five bad? Or
5 is the worst. 5 is the worst. I would say it's a 2.5 or a 3 or something. My non-professional opinion when I look out at the lake. And we think it's, from what we can tell, it's due to oxygen deprivation. Oxygen deprivation. So we will confirm or not confirm this through the limnologist, but it appears to be going in that direction. Big Alum has a thermocline a dramatic thermocline, which is just a way of saying that the temperature at the top of the lake and the temperature at the bottom of the lake is dramatically different. Dramatically. In fact, in the summertime, if it's 80 degrees surface temperature, it's typically about 30 degrees lower, 50 degrees. And I've gone scuba diving in Big Alum before, not the entire lake, but large portions of it, and you know when you hit that thermocline, because your wetsuit is no longer sufficient. Whatever you got on, boom, it's like getting hit hard with a cold shower. And it goes completely pitch black. And it's not like a flashlight will help. It's not dark because the sun can't get there. It's dark because I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's dead algae. I don't know if it's other organic matter. There's something down there in the bottom of the lake. The reason this,
Depth you at?
about 26 feet, just like that. You know, you can see it on your dive computer, and you're going along, and it's normal temperature. And it's not like it's gradually dropping. It's pretty much the same for the first 25 feet, and then at 26 feet, boom, it just drops dramatically, and visibility. I couldn't go any deeper than that because I was afraid of hitting a stick or something like that, you know, again, even with a bright flashlight right on it. The reason why this matters is because if it is true, in lakes that have thermoclines, you're more likely to have oxygen-deprived water towards the bottom. It's like temperature stratification and oxygen level stratification. And number one, that means, if it's true, we'll find out from a limnologist, that you've got a dead zone. Fish need air. I mean, fish need oxygen, not air. And just like if you walked into a room with no accessible oxygen, you would leave that room quickly. They're not going down to the deep water if they can't breathe through their gills. So, and the other really important thing is that I can't tell you scientifically how this works, but somehow when you have oxygen-deprived water in the bottom of the water column, it tends to suck up nutrients that are already existing. Phosphorus, nitrates, potassium, other nutrients that are already in the lake bottom tend to get sucked up and then used for algae and weeds. We would prefer to keep those down at the bottom. There's two ways of dealing with those, are we good? There's two ways of dealing with this issue of nutrients getting pulled up from the lake bed. One is alum. You guys know about alum because you're aware of what South Pond did. Alum is very expensive to treat with alum. And there are, just like as with any chemical compound you put in, there are potential risks or dangers to the fish or to the environment from that. But the other is aeration. The other is aeration. So is to either bubble oxygen down and it bubbles up, or pump water to the surface and basically just get the water circulating so it's not so stratified. Again, it'll be up to a limnologist report to decide, is this necessary, and if so, what's the best way? We really want to avoid spending $500,000 or more on alum, of course, but we also know that if whatever we do, we're going to need to change our OOC. If indeed it makes sense to do it. So I'm not asking for a change today, of course. I'm just putting you on alert that at some point we may come to you and say, hey, the limnologist is recommending aeration. We'll explain why. If you want, he or she can explain it to you. But that is a possible thing we'll look into. Another treatment for the weeds, anyway, that we've begun looking into, in part because of the article that Lauren shared with us about Daiquat, the risks of chemically treating the lake, is mechanical harvesting. Mechanical harvesting. I don't know exactly how it works. I've never seen it done, but you have something similar to a lawnmower that very slowly moves along and picks up the weeds, and then they have to be disposed outside of the lake, of course. Has a number of advantages. One is no toxicity to the ecosystem. The other is that the weeds, by definition, hold nutrients in them. So this is a really important point. It's really easy to get nutrients in the lake, fertilizer or any other type, bird poop. It's really hard to get them out. They don't have a half-life. It's not like phosphorus goes away in 25 years or something like that. If it's in there now, it'll be in there in 1,000 years. It just stays there unless we do certain things. And one of the ways to maybe get a little bit of it out would be if we remove the weeds that have it in it, instead of letting those weeds die in the lake and then just recycling the nutrients endlessly in an endless loop. So there's pros and cons. One of the cons is it's more expensive to do mechanical harvesting. We also need to look into, does it just cut them like a lawnmower, or can it suck the roots out? Especially with clasping leaf. Clasping leaf weeds are very hardy, very strong, very thick. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing in terms of mechanical harvesting. Maybe that will allow us to pull them out by the roots, just like if you have a strong weed, you're more likely to be able to pull the dandelion all the way out, not just the top off. Pulling the top off doesn't get the job done. So, yeah, I mean, and again, obviously, it involves money, so it involves our board, if we ever get to that point that is recommended, and the members, and then we got to raise the money. But that is something, and we might be asking for the OOC to change, particularly if we're having a hard time finding a replacement for dicot. Because that throws everything up in the air of like, okay, what do we do now? Let's see. One thing I will admit, as I was thinking about it, the mechanical harvesting, as far as I know, is very slow moving, so it's not like a fish trawler that's like, chasing the fish and going to kill them and all that kind of stuff. But we do have, in our swim areas, I think around here they're called pumpkin seed fish, this tend to be small pumpkin seeds, and they nest in the shallows. They would run away from a lawnmower that was coming at them, but their nests can't. So there's going to be pros and cons to everything. I just want to be totally candid and say that would be one thing that would be.
Bass do that too.
Bass, do they do it in shallow water or deeper water?
So you can see them from shore.
Okay, so shallow water. Yeah, I mean, and I don't know if someone who's experienced at doing that kind of extraction, weed extraction, can look for I don't know if that can be done to avoid them or not.
Or it could be the time of the year.
Time of year, exactly. And of course, we want to get the weeds, ideally. People, if they're going to pay for it, they want to do it when the weeds are going to be bothering their swimming, which is, June, July, August, a little bit into September. But yeah, exactly, time of year, all those things are important to understand.
But does it make a difference for the dicot, because that would kill the weed too? So,
Say that again?
I mean, would that make a difference, because the herbicide would also kill the weeds? Right?
The dicot, the problem with dicot is it is a contact herbicide, contact. It's not a systemic herbicide, so it doesn't kill the roots. It only kills what's above the, up.
So the fish wouldn't be, I mean, would it affect the fish or the nests or whatever?
The mechanical or the dicot?
The dicot.
Well, the dicot, I mean, if you see this article that what Lauren sent to us, is basically says it's not safe for
Right,
use.
no, I saw that. But
And so perhaps not safe for fish too. I don't know. I mean, the article you sent us, I'm just referencing that. So, I mean, and those of us who have children or grandchildren or guests or ourselves that swim in the lake, I mean, one of the things I do know about dicot is I believe it, from what I understand, it has a very short half-life, measured in days, as in very few days. So if you put dicot in, it's not like it's sitting in there a month later at all. It's gone within, I don't know, a very short time period. So that, to its advantage. But it only kills the surface. It doesn't kill the roots. So it really just buys a very short period of time. And this is something that we're starting to understand now that we have a really healthy weed population in the lake, unfortunately, is that the dicot does kill it. But these darn weeds are so hardy that they take weeks to finally fall over and really get out of the way. And then a few weeks after that, they just regrow. And so it buys you, at best, a month of time. And that's why we came to you, before we saw the article, in August and asked for a second treatment, which you didn't have a meeting, and you made the determination you wanted to do it in front of a meeting, and that was going to make it too late in the season for us to make sense. So we just didn't do it. And And then you sent us the article, and we're like, well, this changes everything. So believe me, we're struggling, and it's hard for those of us who've been enjoying the lake recreationally for decades to go into our swim areas and getting tangled in weeds when it's never happened before. If we have a single mandate from our members, it's get rid of the weeds. And we're starting to have filamentous algae. And so I will tell you, as Mark Smith, not Bella, I'm thinking, stop feeding the plants. We got to stop feeding the plants. And again, as I learned from my private lake, if you put enough nutrients in there, you kill off one of them, say the algae like I did, then the weeds grow. You kill off the weeds, then the algae grows. You understand? I mean, you're going like this with whack-a-mole. And the only way, I may have mentioned last month, it's obvious, but it's worth restating, the only way to deal with plants in the water, you either got to cut off the water, which you can't take the water out of a lake by definition, or you got to cut off the sun, which, yeah, if you've got more trees on the shore is helpful, but I mean, that's a very, very small amount of shade relative to the 200 acres of the lake. Or you can cut off the nutrients, basically starve the plants. And from my experience and what I've read, we'll see what the limnologists say, but that's really the only course. And of course, this is not unique to Big Alum. I mean, go down to Connecticut and they'll tell you about all these lakes and rivers that are having problems with weeds and algae that they've never had before. So, and it happens in the Gulf of Mexico. It happens in Lake Erie, from the rivers that run into Lake Erie from the farmers, mostly, not residential fertilizer. So,
Good news is we don't have any pig farmers in Sturbridge.
we don't, and we're really lucky. You and I were talking about it. Well, you're joking?
No, I'm being sarcastic, of course.
Okay. Well, we don't have any that affect our lake. That's what I will say. As you and I were talking, Ed, before the meeting, Big Alum is very fortunate that we are, of all the Sturbridge lakes, I believe we are at the top of the watershed. So we don't have any streams or rivers running into us. We can't blame our problems on a 100 acres orchard that's a mile away or something upstream, and it's the lake, the rivers bring into the lake. So whatever nutrients we have in our lake, it's either coming from people living on the lake or very close to the lake. Again, my opinion. Before I shift gears, any questions?
And when do you think you would hire the limnologist?
As soon as possible. I mean, we may be within weeks or a couple months. That'll be subject to approval by the board, of course. So we have a board, our next meeting is, the board is a week from yesterday, I believe, and we're not going to make a decision by then. But I can convene an ad hoc meeting on Zoom just to talk about that one issue as soon as possible so we can get the research going. It may be that we can't really enact a lot of change for a whole nother year, which kills me to say that, but the limnologists might need time to do, they can't do it during the winter. They might need another season before they can really come up with full results. So I think it might be a while. I mean, we'll get the limnologist as soon as possible, but before we have, and I can sit before you and say, this is what we're going to do if we can, if you give us permission, because this is what the lake doctor is telling us to do. That might be a year from now. I don't know.
One thing I would suggest.
Yes.
Not me, not the board, just me.
Yes.
Look for some new faces. There are people that have been in and around working on Big Alum and Cedar Lake, and they're fine. But we need some, it would be good to have some new faces.
Yeah, I mean, the limnologists we're talking to have never, they're not associated with anyone who's been on Big Alum.
Yeah.
They're completely new. Yeah, we're looking for the best, most scientific-based analysis and research possible, but we haven't had a limnologist before. We've had people treat the lake, and actually the people who are treating the lake right now, in my personal opinion, I'm very pleased with them. They're as knowledgeable as anyone who's ever treated the lake, but that's what they do. They treat lakes. They're not limnologists. And oh, by the way, the worse shape our lake is in, the better for them.
Right.
right? Because it's more business for them, so.
That's cynical, but, you know.
Well, yeah, I mean, they're good guys. I don't have a problem with them making a living at all. I want to shift gears because we've only got 20 minutes and the room's going to fill up. And some of what I'm going to talk about now is a little bit more awkward, but I think it's important. And I'm really doing the best I can in my role to tell my friends, neighbors, and BALA members, if they choose to listen to me, that, for lack of a better word, you guys are all human. You're doing the best job you can. You're not, because many of them resent you. Many of them are frustrated. And some of it is just idle gossip. And as I said last month, you guys aren't in this for a popularity contest. I get that. You're always going to have someone. I mean, police officers don't go on the road and pull people over and expect people to say, thank you so much for giving me a ticket, and I love you today. So I get that. By the same token, I think there can be an improvement more towards cooperation and collaboration, where we're all pulling in the same direction with the mutual goal of keeping Big Alum as pristine as possible. I understand the need for rules. I understand the need for enforcement of the rules, as long as they're reasonable, which is shades of gray. Again, we wouldn't imagine a world where there are no traffic police officers, where anybody can drive any way they want to. None of us would want that, even though we're annoyed if we get pulled over. Imagine an alternate universe, I'm half joking here, I'm trying to keep some levity in it, where lake residents consider that if they're going to make a landscaping change in their yard, that they proactively seek out conservation's advice to make sure that they're not hurting the lake. In other words, they're thinking, I care about the lake, I care about the people who swim in the lake, I want it to be as safe and as clean as possible. I'll go to conservation as a resource and say, what can I do? So treating Concom as a resource and not feeling so much, as they tell me now, that it's like Big Brother watching over their shoulder. Maybe the picture I'm painting is not entirely realistic, but I'm just,
But we like to be big brothers.
well, but they don't,
It's
but,
our job, actually. Did you read our mission and
well,
what we are?
I'm
here
asking
for?
you to reconsider that. I understand
But
that,
that's not what the state or the Sturbridge town allows us to do.
I understand that there are rules and that your best interest, I have no question in my mind that all of you have the best interest of the environment, and in this case, the best interest of Big Alum in mind. But as I said at the last meeting, in my opinion, you're winning a lot of the battles, but losing the war as a whole. Because if you have people who resent you and are frustrated with you, are they going to be more likely to come to you if they want to do something? Or are they going to be like, yeah, maybe just leave this one alone? You understand what I'm saying? So, so if we all are really interested in what's best for the lake, not only is it more pleasant if there's not resentment or division between, say, Big Alum residents and conservation, but it's better for the lake itself. It's better for the lake itself. So,
We have a hand up.
Yeah.
Laura? Question?
Hi, yeah, sorry, my voice is it's very bad still. I just wanted to mention that the residents should understand that we are not making the rules. The rules are made by the state, especially when you are like I know that we have the town of Sturbridge bylaws, but in the case of Big Alum, like 90% of those permits or those requests are under the Massachusetts laws. So it's not that we are making the law. We are volunteering our time to be sure that the Massachusetts law is what is being followed. So I'm not sure if the residents know that. It's not like we can come up with all these things from the top of our head.
yeah, and I get that there are many shades of gray, and I get that each situation is unique, but there seems to be a certain arbitrariness to it. So let me just say this. Sometimes it feels arbitrary and kind of capricious. So I'll give up an example of myself. When Mr. Barnacle, may he rest in peace, came out to look at my site, our home, when this was 8 years ago or something, when we were asking for a small change. And I was told, okay, you need to do all these other projects, which were not related to what we were doing. But in any event, and by the way, my yard is xeriscaped. I don't have any lawn. We got either mulch or gravel. When he came out and we had done everything that was asked, and he said to me, I'm not sure if I'm going to approve this. It felt very much like, and what am I going to say? I just shut my mouth, right? Because he's in a position of power. I want him to approve my request. I spent 10 grand roughly on it already. And there's a power dynamic there, and it's very awkward for me.
You're switching topics here, or that is thinking about the enforcement of rules for changing private property versus treating the lake.
Yeah, I was trying to change the topic to the relationship and how it's enforced.
The relationship is not one between the board, the lake association. You talk now as a private property owner.
Everything I've said is private property owner, except for what I said at the very beginning.
Right, but there I do have to agree with Flo that we are here to enforce the rules that we didn't make.
Well, look, I don't.
And so I do understand you, but we are now, and that the rules have to be fairly and equally from the impartial spectator perspective enforced, and it's annoying. I mean, it's really annoying from the perspective of the property owner. I fully understand.
But can you understand how I felt
Right, but
when Mr. Barnacle was basically like, yeah, I might not approve you anyway?
This is not now a debate about lake
Who was Mr. Barnacle?
preservation.
Was he the
This is
agent?
now a question of,
Was Mr. Barnacle the agent?
He was on the board for many, many years.
I'm sorry.
And did a great deal of service. I don't want, I'm not on Mr. Barnacle. I don't want to get on him.
no, but I understand, but these are now issues that each private property owner has with the board vis-à-vis the topic that you came here for, and the reason why we actually met. The reason why we met is discussing treatment of the lake, not question of private property owners. I think these are completely different issues. And I think that's not part of the agenda why I came here. You understand? Because everybody has basically the same complaints in Sturbridge. As one of the guys said when he met me, and I said I'm in the conservation committee, he said, you're not one of the most popular members in the town. But this is not the topic that we came here to discuss.
Carsten, I'm here to discuss how we can keep our lake the best we can.
But this is right, but that has nothing to, but that has nothing to do with the rules that we enforce in terms of you changing.
I disagree. I tried to explain it to you very clearly. If they're enforced in such a way that they seem arbitrary, as they did seem to me, and I did not feel like I was treated as an adult, I felt it was unfair, then that's going to build resentment. And if you do that hundreds of times over a period of years, you get a community that is resentful, and they're not going to want to cooperate with you. And even if you say something that, in my opinion, you have code that says no fertilizer within 200 feet, I personally, not Bala, I personally wish people abided by that, but they're like, I'm not going to abide by that. Conservation tells me all kinds of unreasonable things, and they haven't treated me fairly. I'm not going to listen to them. I'm giving you some feedback more in a friendly way. You can take it any way you want. I'm not calling people names. I'm trying to improve a relationship. I've been married 37 years. Today's our 37th anniversary. I said, honey, I'm going to conservation. And you don't have a relationship with anyone, business-wise or anything else, for a long time unless you work things out. And I'm here best I can with my limitations, just trying to work things out so that we get a situation where when you guys issue a rule or there's something in the code, people say, yes, I respect those people, I respect that rule, I'm going to abide by it. Not everybody. There's always, but, a couple questions I have. Someone told me that if we wanted to repair a crack in our breakwater, for instance, our break wall, which, it happens. Water gets in there, it freezes. Obviously, occasionally you need to put in a little bit of concrete glue, so to speak. I was told you need to get permission from conservation to do that. Does the state require that? Or it does?
Does, let me go to your point. I'm going to start right at the beginning.
Okay,
You said nothing specific. You spoke totally generally.
okay,
And if you wanted to come in and say, okay, now, Barnacle came in my yard and this is what he said.
uh-huh,
And why did he say it? What did you, it's your perception versus what you need to know. And you're not getting what you need to know. I'm not saying you're wrong or right, but you just gave a general example of nothing. That, you could say that about the police. We need to get to specificity. If somebody has a problem that we're not polite on, or that we're not, if they don't understand why, then we need to tell them why. We need to give them all the input so that they understand. You just found out that if you needed to crack your wall, that you'd have to come to us, get a permit to do it during the drawdown, and that wouldn't be a big deal, okay? But you can't say, oh, God almighty, a lot. What's a lot? Nobody knows what a lot is. 100. 100 what? I mean, you know what you should do? You should stay here and go through our meeting tonight, because we're going to have some really good fun with a couple of the clients, okay? And you'll be amazed.
I mean, because I've been through the process myself, so I have sat through a meeting.
I mean, I'm relatively
David,
new
yeah,
here.
yeah.
I find lakeside properties really difficult, right? And the reason is, most of the houses wouldn't have been built according to the code nowadays. So every kind of change is basically a violation in some sense. So it's always somehow working it out, because everything is within the 25-foot zone, which
Yeah.
which
I
you're not
don't know
supposed
that
to, so
we're
it's really tough, but.
properly utilizing the time, with all due respect. I would say this, Mark, it's why I sit here, right, today, because constituent services is very important to me, right? To make sure that everybody feels like they get a fair shake. Now, inevitably, once a year, somebody really does not like Eric Gaspar. That's fine. It is what it is.
Once a year?
Maybe twice. But, yeah, and we're gonna have disagreements, right? But I think the goal has always been, for me, because I'm not an environmental scientist like Floor, I don't have 40 years of experience like Ed, right? But I do have a way about trying to work cooperatively with people, and that's always been my goal, right? And I know that, Karsten and I have our disagreements, but we always deal with each other and with the public agreeably, as do Ed and I, right? There's going to be, unfortunately, when you tell somebody that they can't do something on their private property, that stinks, right? But we have to do it in a more respectful way, and there's been times where,
Bingo.
there's been times where that lofty goal over the years has not been met, right? And there's been other times where, when you're met with aggression, right? I've had applicants meet with me with aggression before I've even met them, right? On your lake, which is somewhat unfair, right? But I'm doing a public service and I have to hold myself accountable. So I think I would say, not for the board, but for me and my interactions with the rest of the members of the commission, that's our goal, right? Do we meet that goal every single day? No. And I would encourage people. I talked to somebody who's looking to buy a house on the trail on Big Alum this week, and the first thing I said to him, before you sign on the dotted line, go see Lauren if you want to do anything on that property, right? Because Lauren is such an incredible resource to the town.
Yes.
But people have 40, 50, 60, 70-year memories on those lakes,
Yeah.
right? And there are things that caused bruised feelings in the past. My hope is we can move past it, right? And work cooperatively, but it needs to go both ways. And I've had people literally in this town, just because I say I'm a commissioner on the Conservation Commission, have a negative imprint of me, and that's fine. I took on that burden, right? But the reality is, if we want to work collaboratively on this, and I think we all want to make sure that the watershed in that lake is healthy and is viable for the next 100 years, it needs to be both ways. Because I can tell you, I promise from my seat, and I can't speak for them, but I can tell you the relationship that I have with all of them, that we're not going to overtly meet you with aggression. We're going to want to work collaboratively. And if we don't, sometimes we have private conversations like, maybe we shouldn't have said it in that way, right? Individually and as a group. So I mean, obviously, if there's anybody else that wants to speak on that, but I don't know that with the few minutes that we have left that we need to continue the swirl. We know with the reputation we have. I think I said that to you last week.
I think this is a really important conversation, and I appreciate what you said. And reading between the lines, what I'm hearing is it's not just what we say, it's how we say it. And you take that seriously. And that's basically what I'm asking. And I am going to my friends and neighbors, I already said, and saying exactly what you say, which is, if we think ill of you collectively, then that's not good either. It's got to go both ways, like any relationship. So,
You could start off or tell them, we don't make the tax bill.
we understand that. We understand that. And we went to many of us, and I was there at the meeting with Ann last year, and at the end of it, we weren't necessarily happy, to put it mildly, but it was explained well, and nobody held it against Ann, and I spoke with her afterwards, and she was relieved that it went as well, and that people were as civil as they were. And part of it was that she just explained the facts, and she was very professional about it, and I thought she did a great job. We understand you have nothing to do with the taxation, and
But anything that we do to limit a person on the lake, not always, but a lot of times comes back as a reflection. Do you know what I pay for taxes? Do you know what I pay for taxes? And you're not going to let me do that?
I understand, and it has nothing to do with that. I get that. So but let me just ask this, Ed. So just as people on the lake shouldn't feel entitled, I pay whatever, $1,000 per year, so that gives me the right to do this? No, that's not true. By the same token, I'm asking people on conservation to make sure that you don't, for lack of a better word, that you don't resent us. Because I do sometimes feel, and my neighbors, people, I go to a cocktail party, I don't drink alcohol, but I go to these parties, and they feel like that's how they're being treated. And I'm not just saying this for soft stuff like let's all kiss and make up. I really think it makes a difference from a functional standpoint about whether rules are followed, whether people are respected. It really makes a functional difference. So I feel like I've been heard, and it was awkward for me to bring this up, and I appreciate your listening and your response, whether you've spoken or not, to my point.
If you talk to someone with regard to the negativity on conservation, try and get a few points. What? Why? Who?
Is it the length of time? Something I've heard over the years is that like it takes a little bit longer, like you were saying about streamlining or whatever. It's part of the process, and that's part of why.
Yeah.
As people say, it's very difficult to get a contractor to agree to work on Big Alum because the process is more burdensome than other lakes and other towns. That's what I'm told. And my friends will speak to other homeowners on lakes. It could be 100 miles away in the Commonwealth. It's not necessarily, lead mine or something. They'll speak to homeowners and they'll say, oh, we know that Sturbridge Conservation is the most difficult to work with. So we understand you have a job to do. You need to do it conscientiously. You're protecting the environment. There are rules to be followed. I get that. And you need to be respected from that side too. But I'm just asking that please make sure you do it in a way that people don't feel like your big brother, like you're looking over our shoulder. Treat it like it's a collaboration. Like, look, guys, we'll give you the advice you need to protect your lake. You care about your lake, don't you? Most people will say they care about the lake tremendously. So thank you for all your time.
You do have to vote in the end.
Yes, you do have rules.
Vote in the end, so. You have to vote in the end, so there has to be a yes or no.
Just quickly, as members here from SLAC too. We've been discussing this as lake representatives within the SLAC group, and one of the issues that has come up frequently, you didn't say that exact word, but I think you meant it, is consistency. Because
Yes.
one neighbor will check the other, well, they let me do this, well, they wouldn't let me do that. And so that's part, and I've mentioned this to Lauren too, that explanation, like you said, of the reasoning behind what we have decided to do.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that comes, sorry, Ed, but comes from, we're looking at these things in isolation as opposed to in totality. Because a lot of times we're looking for, we'll have projects brought in front of us and we'll ask for, what is the offset to this? Where are the improvements? How can we, and so somebody may ask for something and we get an improvement in another area, but that doesn't get mentioned in that conversation. It's just, I was able to do this, right? And that's part of the challenge. And I get that, you know, we live in a microwave society and there's not a lot of context put into it. It's just, well, I was able to do that. Why did they stop you?
This is a fabulous conversation to have, because we at SLAC we want to work with and cooperate with Concom so that the lake residents do have a positive attitude.
Right.
So,
And,
Well, the
and
thing is that we're at a place, and we've been at a place for a while. We need to go forward in order to protect the lakes. We need to go further. We have to have a more cooperative. But specificity, and first of all, if you take five, I'll take any five of you, and we'll put you in a room and we'll decide something. Then I'll take five other people and sit you in a room and decide something. It's going to be totally different. That's one of the problems with having a board.
well, it's a good point, because to your point, Mark, the only person on this board, including Flora up there on this commission, that was there when that situation occurred was Ed, right? The 80% of this board is turned over. I'm the next longest standing member of the Conservation Commission. I'm just over 6 years, right? So there is a lot of turnover, and that does create. I mean, Ed and I joke with each other about setting the wrong precedent all the time and making sure that we're being consistent. I think if you watch our meetings, which I know can be so much fun sometimes, you know, we take a lot of time to talk about, you know, are we setting the right precedent? And I think it comes up probably every other meeting in one way, shape, or form, that we're trying to be deliberative and we're trying to be consistent. And are we perfect at that? Well, I don't know anybody who's perfect. So, you know, that's not going to happen. But we are trying to work for the residents, for the businesses of Sturbridge, while applying our mission to protect the wetlands in the town of Sturbridge. And, you know, the only thing I can ask of the members of the community and you guys as leaders on the lakes is, don't close off your thoughts to bringing stuff to conservation because of stuff that happened 10, 15, 20 years ago. It's a completely new board. We have a great amount of experience. We have a new agent. We have new commissioners, and we would appreciate the opportunity to forge ahead in a collaborative way.
I appreciate,
Floor has a comment too, and Chuck, but then I think that we need to wrap it up and head to our public hearings.
Yeah, we need to wrap it up. I know. So I just wanted to mention that I agree with Eric said, but also remember that we are after our day jobs and family and being, we are volunteering 2 days every month to this. We are not doing it because we don't like the people of the lake, because that it seems that was the point. I personally don't know like anyone, or maybe like I know a couple of people, and they're like friends. So it's not that we are doing this. We are volunteering our time. We are like trying to follow the rules that were state like by placed by the state of Massachusetts. And the other thing that I want to mention is that there are spaces to get involved. We had positions open. I don't know if we still have positions open. So anyone that wants to see something changing or wants to know how these things work from the inside, what we need like to do and learn throughout this process, are welcome to be part of the commission as well. Just wanted to mention that.
You're here for, thank you.
Can you hear me? Can anyone hear me?
Yes, Chuck, we can hear you.
Yes, Chuck.
Okay, this is Chuck. I'm with Slack, and I've been listening here, and I want to mention that we've been talking. Lauren, you talked to me at the last coffee and conversation, meeting about this exact issue that Mark's bringing up, and we've had a couple meetings at Slack talking about it, and I think that and everyone understands the role that conservation has and how hard a job it is. And, no one is taking away from the time you guys give on volunteer basis. But I do think that one of the things that we've come up with in the Slack meetings is most of the properties on lakes are non-conforming. And they're either too close, the structures are too close to the water, the setbacks aren't enough. And so consequently, that means that, variations are going to be, necessary. And so when somebody from the lake comes to conservation and they're in a non-conforming situation, a lot of times I think that conservation gives those variances based on other mitigations. I think that's what Mark was alluding to. And I think that if that's the case, then I don't necessarily have a problem with that, other than I think that if, in fact, the rules could be published more succinctly so that people know what the actual rules are, and then when the variances are granted and the mitigations that those homeowners had to go through in order to get the variances are clearly defined so people can see what it is that conservation is trying to achieve. From my meetings with Ed, I have no doubts that Ed has the well-beings of Big Alum as well as all the other lakes in Sturbridge at the bottom of his heart, and I know that. But I think that it is a communication issue with the general public and with lake dwellers in particular, of not understanding, why one person can do this and then the next person can't. And so I think that those mitigation rules, when you say, okay, well, if you put in this kind of shrubbery or you put in these kind of trees or you take away that beach, then we could see our way to allowing a dock or something like that. I think that needs to be really clearly made clear to the public how that power, that's what that is, it's a power, is being wielded. And I think that will go a long way to, providing a better relationship between not just lake dwellers, the community in general.
Yeah. When I went to conservation years ago for my project, I did whatever I was told to do, and I told you a little bit about that, but it was never explained why I had to do the other projects. It was never explained to me what the benefit was. I was like, well, if I got to do that, I got to do that. You're telling me what I got to do. So I didn't like it, but that's the way I dealt with it. But I know we're out of time. Thank you all for your attention. I really appreciate it. This was not the easiest thing for me to do. Hopefully it leads in the right direction. I'll be in touch with Lauren and maybe next year in the winter or spring as we have more developments about the lake.
You're not going to see us again until next year.
I thought you wanted to treat the.
How are we going to get this solved?
It takes time, believe me. It's a marathon. So thanks again for your time and for all your work.
And if you hear anything negative, call me. I'm in the book, and we can hash it out right then and there.
Thank you, Ed.
Hey, Mark, what was the
All
name
right.
of that lake in Oregon?
Can we take a short break?
Yes,
Yeah,
we
can you guys close the special meeting and then, yeah.
Motion to close the public meeting.
Move to adjourn the special meeting.
Second. All in favor?
Small private lake.
Laura,
called
in favor?
Harmony?
In favor?
All right,
I was
great.
just curious because I moved here from Bend, Oregon, so I was always like, oh, we're in Oregon.